Welcome to the podcast With All Your Mind, hosted by me, Rachel Grimm. We're here to help understand the Bible with cultural and historical context, linguistic info, and other cool stuff. Enjoy. Hey, good afternoon, guys. It's Rachel. This is With All Your Mind. And we're back. We're back again. This is another mini episode, but I'm not sure how many it's going to be because I'm going to launch you into a topic that I have zero notes for. I did my research a couple of days ago and I couldn't record the last couple of days. So I've just been sitting on it and hoping that this information didn't leak too far into the back of my brain. And hopefully you can just talk about it and get enough information that it's usable for you guys, okay? The topic I wanted to talk about today is all the different names that we apply to the land that Israelites occupied from the time that Abraham got there until modern day Israel, okay? So there's a bunch of different names, and some of them have religious connotations, some of them have political connotations, some of them are just historical. So I'm going to try and stay away from political anything. I'm just telling you the information about where these names came from and what they mean, why we use them, why you should use them. And I'm doing all this because I realized there was one name that I hadn't been using and I should have been. Okay? So names of the land. So I'm going to go through this information historically as much as I can because there's a lot of overlap, a lot of things that... Should we call it this or should we call it that? Well, it kind of bleeds over into each other, so we'll just do the best we can, okay? So the first name that we should use is the land of Canaan. Canaan is what the land was called because the Canaanites lived there. If you remember back in Judges and Joshua, there were all sorts of different people living in what we call the land, right? And there are Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, there, that's better, Jebusites, and a whole bunch of other ones. There's a long list. But we call the land of Canaan, the land of Canaan, because the Canaanites were living in part of what is modern day Israel. And actually, when I was growing up on Guam, there was a neighborhood store that we would get candy cigarettes from, if you remember that. We'd get candy cigarettes and what we called packs. I think around here they're called pops, little things that you throw on the ground and they're like mini fireworks. By the way, they're super powerful anymore. They were not that powerful when we were kids, were they? Dang. Anyway, the name of that neighborhood store was Canaan Market. And we used to make fun of it like, Canaan? It's Canaan. Hello. Turns out somebody got the biblical name right. It's pronounced Canaan. There's two A's for a reason. It's not just to, throw another A in there. So Canaan, the land of the Canaanites, one of the original inhabitants of the land. The Jebusites were more of like a city-state. Jebus, Jerusalem. The Jebusites lived in Jerusalem. Canaanites were in another part. Amorites were up towards, Jordan. Edomites were Jordan as well, but southern Jordan. And on it goes, right? By the way, whenever you read in the Bible, like 1st and 2nd Samuel, where they're talking about Hittites, Gittites, these are often city-states that they're referring to. Such as a Gittite was somebody from Gath, the Philistine city of Gath, okay? So you can kind of pinpoint where people were from based on their name. Anyway, okay, so that's the land of Canaan. And then we also call it the Promised Land because God said to Abraham, I'm going to take you to a land, I'll promise you this land. And it's then often referred to in the Bible as the Promised Land, the land that God promised to Abraham. Now, Abraham only owned one plot of land by the time of his death, right? And it was where he was buried. Now, I think it was Jacob. By the time that Jacob was living in the land, he still only owned that portion of the land, but he was the one that had the 12 sons, right? All the 12 tribes of Israel, they became the tribes of Israel. But his name, Jacob, God changed to Israel. Israel means governed by God. And at the time of his life, towards the end of his life, where he lived had started to become called the land of Israel, because that was his name, right? So we start getting the name Israel around the time of Jacob, because that was his name, and he was the patriarch, the one with lots of sons. They were starting to have kind of clans at that time. So Israel started up around the time of Jacob, but it wasn't until there was a nation of Israel that it really started to be called Israel. Now there's another name that we have when the tribes split up into two nations, and it's Israel and Judah. Judah is just because Judah was the main tribe in the southern kingdom. There were parts of other tribes that joined Judah, but it was mostly just Judah. Then there were 10 northern tribes, and they called themselves Israel. So there was a distinction. After Solomon died, the kingdom split apart, and there's the northern nation of Israel and the southern nation of Judah, or the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. So after a very relatively short period of time, Israel became Israel and Judah. Now Palestine comes from the Philistine. The Philistines, if you remember, were the people that lived along the edge of the Mediterranean. Gath, Ekron, Ashkelon, Gaza, those cities are all right along the coast. A lot of those cities are now in present-day Gaza, and so you can't really visit them. But Ashkelon is a beach city. So when you think Philistine, think beach. It's right along the beach. But Palestine comes from Philistine. And so Palestine is actually an ancient name, but the reason it got brought back up again into modern vocabulary is when the British were controlling modern area of Israel before Israel was a nation in 1948. Israel became a nation again in 1948. Before that, the British held control, political control, military control of that general area, and they called it Palestine. Why did they call it Palestine if it was an ancient name from before the time of the Kingdom of Israel? Well, it was because they wanted to associate that area with ancient peoples that were not Israelites. They were trying to distance Jews from that land, okay? So that was a British decision to call it Palestine. Now, are there any modern-day Philistines? No. They might be like a tiny bit of a bloodline mixed in with other bloodlines, but there is no modern-day Philistine, okay? People who are Palestinians, which is where that word Palestine comes from, Palestinians, have usually a mixed heritage from Iraq, Jordan, other countries surrounding Israel. Okay, so now we have modern day Palestine it depends on who you talk to, what that's defining. I'm not going to get into it because that gets way too political. Okay, so modern day Israel is a nation in the Middle East. It was also an ancient kingdom under Saul, David, and Solomon, and then a divided kingdom, meaning a smaller, broken away segment of a kingdom after Solomon. And then it never really fully regained its sovereignty for more than a chunk of time at a time. After, I think it was the Assyrians and Babylonians conquered the nation, really there was just one mega empire after another that controlled the area. It was first Assyrians took the northern kingdom, Babylonians took the southern kingdom, then the Greeks came in the 300s BC and controlled the whole area under Alexander the Great, and then under certain split up different dynasties that were Greek after that. And then it was the Romans for a good, I think, 3.5 centuries. And then on and on. Ottoman Empire came in after that. There was no independent sovereign nation from the time of, say, 600s BC all the way up until 1948. There was no sovereign nation of Israel. Okay, I'm just going to try and make that short. We're going to stop there. If you have questions, I'm going to start putting my podcast email into the show notes. If you have any comments, send it to me through my email, and it's going to be in the show notes every time from now on. And it's withallyourmindpodcast@gmail.com. All right, so I'll put it in there every time. If you have questions, I can try and answer them. If I don't know the answer, I can try and direct you to where the answer could be. All right, we're going to stop there. Have a good one, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.